Hey folks, I'm Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions, and today I'm joined by Evan and Dave, and we're going to talk through the strengths and weaknesses of big agencies, mid-sized agencies, and small one-person shops as we all navigate the marketplace of serving clients. Evan and Dave, you could introduce yourselves.
Sure. Evan Boyer. I'm the founder and CEO of Leaders PR, and I help B2B companies and their leaders create clear narratives that gain attention and build trust through earned and known media. And this was really born out of my experience, almost 15 years in PR agencies, all sizes, boutiques, mid-sized firms. I just came from Fleischman Hillard, which is a extra large shop. And just at every level, just seeing from of client, really from startup founder to the kind of chief nerd type, right, to multinational CEOs. Many of those folks they really struggle to unlock the storyteller inside, despite whatever knowledge they have and the great innovation that their companies have and all these things. So that's really where I step in, and I'm a believer in the power of exceptional communication to be an unlock for those people. And I'm excited to be now doing it for myself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Dziok, Managing Director at Narrative Strategies. We are a strategic communications firm, pushing about 85 people right now, based in Washington, D.C. My background, probably like a lot of folks in D.C., I started out in politics, was obsessed. I had the campaign bug early, ended up on Capitol Hill for a few years, then went over to Edelman Public Relations and really got into corporate communications, went in-house at Koch Industries, Koch with a K, for about 8 years, running public affairs communications for them. And about 3.5 years ago, went back on the consulting side as a managing director here. So looking forward to engaging with you all today.
First agency I've ever worked at is my own. We just hired our sixth and seventh people. So we're a very small team. For about half of our 7 years, we were two, three people. And in the last 18 months, as I've really invested in the LinkedIn platform to drive sales and build relationships, I've noticed a lot of small agencies, typically with 1 to 3 people, have criticized the big agency model as broken. And I've never worked at those firms. It does seem like they charge a lot of money, and sometimes I feel like we as a small agency deliver similar or better value. At the same time, we primarily partner with agencies. And so when we work with a larger firm, we see how many resources they have. We see that they have this deep bench. They've gotten their clients on that specific trade show or into those conferences 500 times, and it would take them a week to deliver, whereas it might take us 6 months to build that more traditional public relations platform, voice, and coverage. And so what I really wanted to explore here is there's three angles we're going to tackle. One is from the client side. How does a client experience small, mid, big agency experience? Second, how does the leadership of the agency of those sizes, how should they consider their size and strengths and weaknesses thereof? And then we're going to talk from the staffing side. When you're a small agency, a lot of times your staff is doing 3 or 4 or 5 things, which can be good because you learn a lot, but you also have a limited ceiling where you can rise. In a big agency, you might get tunnel visioned, which makes you an industry expert or a specific tactical expert, but maybe you lack that broad-based strategic experience. And Evan, as you'll describe later, you get stuck managing people, and a lot of, as one of our clients describes it, meeting hell instead of actually going out and executing for clients. So let's tackle the client experience first. And again, we're a small agency. What we've experienced is that a lot of bigger firms will hire us because we have an author base. We can write and place the op-eds quickly and get follow-up interviews in specific niches, regions, political spaces that maybe the larger agency doesn't have that ability to move as quickly because their team is trying to deal with the client directly. So we can be more agile for them. At the same time, I mean, geez, some of these deliverables that these big agencies can offer is just astounding. I mean, they can't just use AI to develop a 60-page backgrounder that looks amazing and it clearly took a whole team a long time to develop the messaging behind it. So Evan, you've gone the full extreme here. from the big agencies all the way down to 30 days, 45 days into running your own shop.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the strengths and weaknesses from the client's point of view?
Yeah, well, let me first say, just coming out of my big agency experience, I spent the last 4 years at Fleischman Hillard. There are some incredible people there, and I think that that's one of the powers, the big, huge powers of large agencies, is they attract that top senior level talent. You've got a lot of people who are there for 15, 20 years
Right.
working inside of those agencies, and that, by and large, I think is what clients are paying for when they're signing up with a big agency, and they want that access, right? They want the access to the partner, the senior partner who has dozens of years of experience in that space, and they want to know that that person is available to them. Is that person going to be working on their business every day? No. And I think that that's part of where, at the mid-sized level and the boutique level, you start to see a little bit more parity in what's delivered and provided. And as a point of differentiation, right? Cost effectiveness can be a lot greater at lower levels because they are, as you mentioned, more agile. So I think at the senior levels, you get some really awesome talent at big agencies. I think you also get awesome talent elsewhere. And it's just a matter of what's the expertise that you're really looking for. Another thing on the pro side of big agency, the resources are incredible, as you mentioned, that you're able to throw a bunch of people at a project, or even some of the tools that they're able to provide. I just started out on my own. I have I probably shouldn't be saying this out loud, but I'm in a group that has a Cision subscription that is able to save me a little bit of money. It's the base package, that sort of thing. Some of these large agencies, they'll have the full bells and whistles on a couple different platforms, whether that's Muck Rack or Meltwater or social monitoring tools and whatever else. And that increases the quality and certainly the speed of the deliverables. And sometimes I think mid-sized, smaller shops, you got to be scrappier, right, to be able to produce the same results with less resources. And then the third thing I would say, on the pro side of big agency, having done a little bit of corporate and crisis work, and Dave, this is probably similar for you on the PA side, right? Is when you need somebody, the heavy hitter, you want to bring in the closer. That person exists, or a couple of those people exist, and that can be really attractive if the client's in a position where, hey, I really need this. Very senior level of experience, very niche expertise, and I don't want to have to look around for it. I know that I can go to the big agency and get it.
Yeah, just building off that, I think if you're looking to bring on and engage a public affairs, public relations firm, you have to understand what your objective is. It's not, all of these firms are not one size fits all. When I think back to when I started at Edelman, I remember one of the first clients, I was sent to Canada to work for a company up there, and I remember sitting around a long table, this war room, surrounded by people from Edelman offices in Chicago, New York, and Atlanta, Georgia, and I was in Washington, D.C. I'm like, wow. I mean, just looking around, the resources that a firm of that size can throw at a client on any given challenge is it's unmatched to what a mid-sized firm could do, or a boutique firm. But that's not to say that that's the right fit. That's good. That could be bad depending on what you're trying to accomplish by bringing on this firm ultimately. So I just think you have to be crystal clear on what you're looking for at the end of the day.
So I want to just add on that, because Dustin, I don't think I really answered your first question, which was how is it going 30 days into it, and what differences are you seeing, right? And one of the things that I'm really kind of digging in on is my ability to get into the work and do some things that maybe I haven't done in a few years, like build a media list, like actually be the person sending the pitches, making the follow-up calls, and I enjoy that stuff. I think again, as a product of value. You don't see that from a large agency, and even some mid-sized shops, right? The senior most people are staying out of that stuff. But I had a mentor long ago who used to tell me, do less better. And I think
Right. Yes.
being able to do less better is what a lot of clients are looking for. The scope of
Mhm.
work is we just need media hits, or we just need you to
Right.
manage this one particular issue, or we just need a little bit of writing. And I think that that's where, on a consultant level, boutique level, you get a ton of value for a
Right.
fraction of the price.
Well, I actually ran into that problem, no, the opposite problem. I felt inferior when I first started my company. My business partner and I came up with this phrase, "We put you in the press." And then I met people who said things like, "We build businesses." And they sound just grandiose and much more sophisticated. So I started saying, "Oh, we help businesses build their profile," whatever I said. And my business partner and a mentor at the time said, "Dustin, how many businesses have you grown?" I said, "Zero. This is my first." "Okay, great. How many times have you been published in the press?" And at the time, it was about 3,000. And they said, "Great. That's a much more impressive number. Stick with that one." And that was my first lesson in being an inch wide and a mile deep. Because a lot of agency, new agency owners, one, two, three-person shops, they try to do everything and they can't. They literally can't from a resource perspective. But second, when you see the construction company that has, we specialize in windows, doors, roofs, landscape. At some point, you realize they're not really specializing in anything, as opposed to the restaurant that has 6 options for breakfast. Each one's going to be amazing. And so I do think that small shops, in order to provide the most value, do have to be as specialized as possible. Even if there are some, writing isn't exactly the same as pitching, but you can put it under an umbrella term or umbrella catchphrase that allows the client to understand what the value they're getting. And so, from the leadership side of things, right? We've talked a bit about the client, what the client should expect to get. Dave, you talked about how when you joined Narrative, it was about 20 people, and now it's 80, 85. That's a lot of growth in what, 4 years? That's significant growth. And you talked about being a flat organization in our prep call, and how you're trying to manage as a team, a leadership team, you're trying to manage the challenges of staying as flat as possible, but knowing that you can't in the same way that you could when you had 20 people. So can you talk about some of these challenges and how you're trying to make sure that as leaders of the company, you're still providing that highest level service to the client while still growing?
Yeah. So speaking about, some of these larger firms, Fleischmann's or Edelman's of the world, traditionally, if you were to go in and apply for a more entry-level baseline job, or if you're stepping out from an internship and, you want to become a associate or whatever that firm calls their kind of more
Mm.
entry level positions, a lot of times with those big firms, you have to choose kind of the path, right? They're looking to hire associates for the healthcare practice or the energy team or a specific sector vertical at the end of the day, which has its pros and cons, right? I mean, ultimately, if,
Mhm.
if you go down that path, you really love, healthcare and pharmaceuticals. If you stick with it in 5 to 10 years, you're going to have a hell of a lot of knowledge in that in that issue area, a lot more than peers ultimately. However, if you go down a path and you're kind of just kind of going through the motions or not really fired up about this, it's not necessarily easy to then just jump to another, team necessarily. That's not how these larger
Sure.
firms are built at the end of the day. When Narrative started, we wanted to avoid that pitfall where
Mhm.
we bill ourselves as generalists, right? You could be touching on an energy client to a healthcare client and anything in between, touch a lot of different issues. We feel like that gives exposure to a lot of folks, especially early on in their careers, but even as they grow, we want people to have knowledge everywhere. Now, as we grow from say 25 to 85, and we work with a certain client for who might have brought us on for one ask, it's like, hey, you guys are really doing a great job in this area. Can you do this, which requires maybe 1, 2, 3 levels of deeper industry sector specific expertise at the end
Okay.
of it, which a generalist might not be able to, just learn on the fly, right? Or have not picked up from whatever they were doing with that client before. So, we are, as we grow, are kind of running into some of those, not say running into them, but having to consider or work around or figure out how to navigate some of these obstacles. I think some of these bigger firms could be an impediment to how they run their organization and these like this sector versus this sector team, who's making more money, and it becomes kind of this siloed battle in some ways. We want to keep things flat. ultimately, but we're also realizing that we do have to adjust for and bringing in maybe just a subject matter expert who understands how to navigate the drug regulatory process of the FDA, right? Not something that someone's going to just pick up after college at the end of the day. With that said, we're firmly ingrained that as you come on board here, we expect you to be generalists. I think when we think to kind of growth of the within the company itself, one of the things, the challenge is when you have a firm of 20, 25 people, you kind of understand what everybody is working on. You might not work with them directly on a given account, but it's one step removed, right? You kind of say, oh, Jim, he's doing a really good job on this. You're kind of in everybody's review, right? You're kind of giving performance evaluations and assessments because you're very close to them. You start growing that to 80, 100 people. There's no way you're going to be in everybody's review or have any idea what they're touching on a given basis or what they're doing. So how do we kind of, again, not set up this hierarchy ultimately, but set up systems in place where employees within the firm feel that they have an advocate, somebody who's watching out for them and in charge of their growth in the company. Something that we started a couple of years ago is this program called an accelerator program, where as a managing director, and I'll use myself as an example, as a managing director, I lead a team of about 4, 5, 6 individuals of all levels, below who they can go to meet weekly, sometimes more than that, to kind of discuss any challenges that they're having in their work, any internal problems that they're having with anybody else or colleagues or anything along those lines. It's supposed to be like an educational, just, hey, let's troubleshoot some things. What are your challenges? And we also guide them through their career progression to the point of like, hey, I feel like I'm there to bump up from associate to manager. What do I need to do to get there? And we kind of work with them and coach and counsel because we want them to be successful. So they have someone that they can go to. These people might not work on any accounts that I have. Might not work
Oh,
on anything like that ultimately. It's just how can we provide, because we don't want to set up those kind of teams where it's like, this is my team, we're only working on this type of work, we want to keep it flat, but we also want to give people some insight on how they can
right,
grow but still keep the
right.
strong at the end of the day. So it's something that
Well,
we've had some success with.
and it allows them to get to know managers outside of their silo. It allows you to get to know
Yes.
staff and get to know their, now you have a cross section of knowledge that wouldn't have had if you just had your silo of 5 clients or 10
Yep. And
clients that
it's
you're
one of those
overseeing.
things that we're intentional on
Interesting.
that I think one of the larger firms struggle, to be candid, really struggle with a lot of times.
Now, quick question is on that. You talked about being a generalist firm, and we're the same way, right? We're an earned media firm, and we cover whatever industries our clients want us to. Right now, it's 95% public affairs. 2 years ago, we had a sugar-free gum campaign for 8 months. Dave, you were actually responsible for that referral. We appreciate that. So when we talk about growth, sometimes it's in the verticals, right? So we have consultants we bring on or vertical experts, but sometimes it's services. A service we don't talk about, we don't market it, is we have a vendor for digital marketing that we refer that person to a very small select number of clients. So how do you think through as well, Dave, and Evan, feel free to jump in, not just the industry, the vertical, but also the services offered as clients seek not just, hey, you did this one industry area, can you do these other 3? But hey, you did earned media really well. We really aren't happy with our digital person or our influencer push. Can you guys handle that as well?
Yeah, it's just very quickly. It's something that we make sure our clients know our full scope and capabilities of what we can do, and we're
Sure.
always growing as a firm that jumps from 20 to 50 to now 85 folks. Some of those additions just aren't just going up the client pipeline. They're adding capabilities that we didn't have when we started. For instance, a few months ago, we just started an insights and analytics vertical that we never had before, bringing on
Mhm.
folks who were previously working companies or trade associations to build that we can now offer instead of having to refer it to a outside contractor or consultant.
Mhm.
We can now grow that internally. So it's thinking where can we, you can't do everything at once, right?
Right.
And figuring out where's the investment worth it, where we think that in this market we can make we could play to our comparative advantage in some way and actually grow. So it's thinking where can we make those strategic investments and bring on this external capability that we didn't have? Because ultimately, that's how we want to grow this thing, right? We don't want to stay flat.
Right.
Stay flat, you're ultimately losing at the end of the day, and
Right.
you're going backwards instead of forward. So it's thinking through strategic, meaningful, I wouldn't say acquisitions, but just how you're thinking through different capabilities that you can offer your clients.
Yeah, I want to come back to the discussion about analytics because I think it's a really valuable and important one. And seeing, again, for myself, being new in it on my own and coming from a place where they had a very large and singularly focused analytics arm, that's a little bit different. And I'm having to learn how to be scrappier with audience research and how can I do things myself or for low cost. So yeah, I'd love to unpack that one a little bit, but I want to hit on a word that both of you used that really actually kind of grates me in our industry, and it's the word generalist, right? Because I think for people who don't understand all of the different things that we do, all of the different industries that we cover, it can be very binary for them, right? Generalist versus expert, like, oh, I want the expert. But in fact, we're not so generalist isn't like, and when people ask me that question, and when I tell them, oh, I've worked in healthcare, manufacturing, finance, technology, all of these different sectors, and they say, oh, so you're a generalist. And my response usually is, no, I'm not a generalist, but I'm very versatile. And I take the experience and the understanding of all of these different industries that I've worked in, and I can actually apply them to your business, whether or not I've spent umpteen years working in your specific industry. So I think, as a industry, as a profession, I think it's something that we can all do a better job of is pushing off the idea that just like, oh, general communications, this is everybody just kind of does everything. I think we have a skill set and experience and are practiced in a lot of different things that people will gladly just put off as like, oh, you're a generalist, or oh, you just do PR.
No, that's fair. I struggled with that for years because we're an earned media specialty firm, not an industry specialty firm. And that was hard before we pivoted to the communications industry as our primary target audience. It was hard for people to understand. Well, you don't know anybody in my industry. Well, PR isn't built on who you know, it's built on your story. Oh, and by the way, yes, we'll figure you out just like we did for 8 other clients in the course of our company. And so you raise a good point though. When I say generalist, I mean more in terms of industries that we serve, but we're industry neutral. But you're right. I mean, I probably will now not use the word generalist ever again. No offense, Dave.
Great point.
I think, among us and probably the people who are watching, it's understood what we mean, but you get outside and you start pitching to prospects and people who aren't involved in communications. I mean, I think even a lot of marketers look at it like, oh, this is a generalist PR firm.
Right.
And I don't think that's really an accurate representation of the value that we bring.
Love that.
No, I think that's a really good point. Evan, you're used to having lots of resources, right? As we're growing, we actually finally have the financials, and I'm a big believer in the good to great principle of you find people, you build seats around people. You don't jam somebody into an existing seat. And we're small enough that that's allowed us to be very agile in how we hire people. And so, our team is a conglomeration of full-time, part-time, and freelancers. But in May, when we made 2 hires in the last month. So in May, we only had 5 people, one of whom is not at all involved in the actual media work. We still put out 35 or so pieces of content and landed 25 placements for clients. We were just all working way more hours than we should. So now that we have 2 more team members who are very eclectic in their backgrounds intentionally, we're able to have a broader set of resources available. And we finally have the financials where we can invest more in different platforms, subscriptions, et cetera. In your case, Evan, you've gone from having these huge, resources to being a one-person show. And in order you can't just be serving clients anymore, because you also have to do business development. You have to be on this show so you can have clips you can use for marketing, and you have to be on LinkedIn. You no longer can rely on a team that's doing that as a business development squad. So how do you think through, what you're, and again, I don't know if you want to be a one-person show for 30 years, or if you want to grow a team, but how do you think through specifically the most the most effective use of your time, which is your most valuable commodity when you're running a small shop?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's still something that I'm figuring out, right? It's early days, but I
Sure.
typically try to ask myself questions like, what's the most valuable use of my time? What can I afford not to do, this morning or today? What can I
Mhm.
push off till later? And, and what's going to make me money? So if I have a proposal or an inbound request, like I'm more likely to be able to be thinking about handling those things first. I think there's also kind of an exciting component for me of, I've always loved writing, and obviously I love the work that I do as a PR professional, and getting to do a little bit of that for myself in the sense of business development and personal branding. So I try to carve out time for that as well, just because I know it, I enjoy it, I feel like I'm good at it. And I know that also comes at a cost of not being able to do a couple of other things on a day to day. So we'll see how it evolves with the number of clients that I get, and the amount of time that I have available to continue doing like business development activities versus the client work. But what gets me up in the morning is I'm excited to do the client work. And those folks that have signed up with me, so far, I think are seeing the value of having somebody with 15 years of experience who can really get into the weeds with them and talk about like, hey, we're going to pitch this angle, and we're going to pitch these reporters, and we're going to write these bylines, and we're going to create this content for you, or update this website copy, whatever it is. And I love being able to be super versatile. And you used the word agility earlier. Actually, I think that's really good, because it's not a huge. I don't have to go through a bunch of red tape, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like I would at a large agency. Oh, client wants to change the scope. Do we need a change order? All this sort of stuff. It's just like, okay, you want me to focus on this thing? Let's go.
Side of that, I've actually found myself enjoying the business of PR almost as much as I enjoy the writing of something and placing it. And so I really enjoy kind of stepping back. I have a writing team now that hopefully by early to mid-September, the goal is that I'm not at all involved beyond taking the assignment from the client and putting it out to the writer. Because I'm not involved in the writing or research fact checking, the copy editing, except for a final set of eyes. I'm removing myself from that process in order to grow the company. And a lot of people I've talked to over the years, again, like you say, and they want to go back to what they really love, which isn't meeting hell and managing 6 people who are churning over every 18 to 36 months. But Dave, have you seen for yourself things that you would have not been able to do, experiences and opportunities as the organization has grown and you've had to mature as a leader in the organization? Are there opportunities? What are some of the opportunities you've seen for yourself in your professional, personal development as the organization has grown and you had to change your leadership style?
Well, it's very much that as a managing director, where I am one level below a partner, what I appreciate about the firm that we have now, yeah, business development's important. We need to prioritize that, right? But at the end of the day, what we stress, what I think through every day, yeah, I might love to write. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I'm really good at. It's where I can create value. However, if I'm just doing that kind of like, oh, a client request comes in to do an op-ed, right? Great example. It's like, I love
Sure.
writing
Yeah.
op-ed. I love that. That's awesome. I would love to do that. However, there are 5 other people on the team, some with less than I, who actually also need to learn how to write op-ed.
Right.
Like I was given a chance one day. So what I love about the organization and the structure that we're in, I love being able in that position to teach and coach and empower them to do that, which kind of allows us as a growing firm where we keep expanding based on my experience. Well, as I said earlier, what are those other capabilities that we need to grow? Who do we need to be talking to? How do we build, what are we missing here? Do we get into financial litigation comms that we don't necessarily offer as like an offering right now, or just for example, and thinking that way, while other people hold the pen on an op-ed, ultimately that what I'd love to do, but then I can come back to and help coach and grow. And it just kind of feeds the system to make sure it's this mantra to make sure you're always in this coaching mindset, teaching the folks you might be great at it. One of the toughest things is as we look as people look to get promoted at the end of the day. It's like, I'm really good at that. So if I just keep doing that, people will see the
Oh,
value.
yeah.
I get applauded to do that. And I'll keep going and doing that. It's like you hit a
Yeah.
certain level when you want to get into director where you have to, direct others and making sure that they're managing to directing, that you're imparting the knowledge that you have, that they're growing, because that's how we grow and get better as a firm at the end of the day. So it's one of those where you got to learn how to kind of let go of those things that you love doing ultimately and find enjoyment in the value that you're creating from others on your team from learning those and developing a passion for those same things that you do.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for that, Dave. Coming from a firm where I was in a similar seat, right, with direct reports and the whole reporting stack, and you talked earlier beforehand about people who are, not even in your report stack, who you are in some way responsible for their development. That takes an immense amount of time and also focus for you to actually do that job well, rather than just mail it in and say, okay, well, if you stay here long enough, you'll get promoted, and we'll figure out what you're good at and what you're not. So kudos to you for really putting the muscle into that. That's awesome. I think for me, having had that experience also, I was really itching to, like I've been saying, get back into the work and do some of the things that put a fire in my belly. And so I'm enjoying doing some of the writing, doing some of the editing, building some of the media lists, and doing some of the research. I don't know if it'll be that way forever. Obviously, it's just me right now, and it might get to a place where I need to level back up into more of that role that I was serving within an agency. But it's one of the beauties of our industry too. It's like you have a lot of optionality. You can choose your path. If you have enough experience, you can decide to be a writer. You can decide to be focused on a particular industry, or you can take your knowledge and your experience and use it like Dave is doing to grow other people inside of his firm. So one of the I think unseen beauties of our work, and within all shapes and sizes of different agencies, you can kind of choose your own adventure.
Now, we haven't talked about yet, and I promise you guys I would work this into the conversation, is we're not just, robots, and, you're not just probably Dave talking to people about their growth within or their professional growth. I'm sure that people come to you and say, I'm dealing with this challenge at home, or I'm dealing with this perceived, iniquity internally. And some things you just have to grow up and deal with your own stuff. But Evan, how old's your youngest?
3 months.
3 months. My oldest has her 7th birthday this week, and my 5th kid was born in February. And Dave, you have a 15-month-old and a 3-year-old, right?
Yep, that's right. 3.5. Yep.
So, the office I'm in right now is my home office, but I also have a co-working space because sometimes I just need to get out and not be surrounded by noise that I'm not making. And so, how do you, Evan, as a one-person shop, but also Dave, interested in your perspective on the other side of it is, how do you manage? What are some of the strategies and tactics and processes you use to ensure that when you're on, you're on? In my case, my firm got started. I was let go from a job. I started my company, and we had a baby coming in 2 months. I didn't actually have a separate working space for almost a year because I was so used to working from my dining room table. I worked from home before it was cool, and I knew how to do that. But when I had this little kid trying to climb in my lap while I'm trying to write something, and I start raising my voice, and my wife has to remind me, "Hey, Dustin, you're sitting at the dining room table, and we live in a condo in Fairfax. It's not like we have a lot of space." That's when I had to start thinking through having an office, separate workspaces. Where does the office located? We had it in the basement of this house. And I was, honey, where are the bowling? We don't own any bowling balls. How are the kids finding them to drop them above my skull on the floor? Well, it was actually just the toddler hitting her cup on the dining room table, and that was going through the floor under my head. So we moved to the third floor. I have shifted my office in 7 years 5 different significant times. And we're a remote team. I don't have to buy a building. I don't have to rent a big office for 85 people. It's a very simple operation. And I've had to think through this as a major part of the strategy.
So you're talking a lot about physical space, which I think is super important. One of the things that I'm finding and really enjoying, not having a structured corporate 9 to 5 deal, and in our industry, it's not always 9 to 5, right? It's 8:30 to 8 or 8:30 to whenever. I think the other piece of this for me has been time, right? Because I've never been somebody who probably until I started doing this was an early riser. I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm ready to go. And
Sure.
I get probably 2 hours in before my 3-year-old wakes up. And that just gives me a huge jump on the day. And I know that I
Yep.
have to accomplish more in a day right now than the average person who wakes up, rolls into work, and then leaves at 5. Like, I know that that's not a reality for me. So I'm just trying to find pockets of time, maybe that didn't exist in the past. I mean, and weekends too, I'm not ashamed to say, I'll get up early on weekends before my kids get up, and I'll knock out a couple hours. And that just gives me the space really to be able to devote my attention to them. Like you're saying, when you're sitting at the dining room table, you don't have to be on your phone and all
Right.
those sorts of
Right.
things. But I found that I've been able to manipulate that a little bit more, mostly because I don't have very many meetings. Like, I'll talk to a couple
Oh,
clients, but I'm not sitting there. I mean, I used to roll into work and I'd look at my calendar and it's like, okay, well, I've got 4 hours of time to be able to work
sure.
and also 4 hours of time for meetings. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get done with basically a half day of
Sure.
thinking time, and sometimes it could be less than that. But that's one major difference. And so time and space, I think if you can try to manipulate both of those in whatever way you can, you'd be better off.
This is the eternal question that I don't know if anybody has actually figured it out yet,
Yeah.
right? The work-life balance question. Ultimately, I'll never forget. I'm always an early riser. I loved waking up early. I'd wake up at 4 just to get ahead, or 5, or write down
No.
things that I need to do, or get
No.
stuff done that I need
Oh,
to do
no.
before anyone wakes up. But then
Oh.
when you had kids, that kind of changes to the point where maybe the baby's crying, or maybe the 3-year-old now gets up also at 5 o'clock, which ruins your plans to actually get stuff done. So you're back up. So you're being challenged, and I'm still figuring this out, to grow more patient at the end of the day,
Yep.
and to ultimately work through things and understand you can control what you can control. I give you, the both of you, all the credit in the world as more sole practitioners, smaller firms, because you're always on, right? You
Right.
it's up to you, right? I don't know if that's the life for me. You guys are tougher. Where I love working and having the backstop, where just speaking from a firm leadership perspective of making sure that, and this is preached down from the founding partners all the way down, that like when you're off, you're off. You have
Right.
colleagues for a reason, and I don't want you
Yep.
to be, if some emergency happens, then okay, maybe you just kind of
Right.
fall, or you got to jump on. But for the most part, I don't want you checking emails or responding to emails when you said that you're out of the office and taking personal time. That's looked down to
Right.
at the end of the day, which I truly appreciate in terms of the leadership of what we're doing here. And it's something that, you got to remind folks who are starting out, who are hard chargers, that, they think that any time off is a sign of weakness, or who need to work 14 hours a day. It's like, settle. All right. I get it. What we do is important, but there's other important things that you need to do. So I truly
Yeah.
value that, but finding that right, that how to balance it is always kind of an evolution, I would say, in some ways.
Well, and to your point about evolution too, everyone, it's never going to be static, right? Because when we had so much business coming in May, I've been working 60 hours. This will be my second week in a row, and the fifth since early mid-April that I haven't worked 60 hours. And that routine was basically get up at 5:30, which I hate to do. I'm a night person by nature, but get up, get breakfast ready, rotate the dishes, handling the first risers of the children at 7:15. And then I'm out the door. I don't work by 7:30. I work till 5:30. Kids go down, I'm working 8 to 10. Right? That was the routine that I generally have when I'm working more hours. But now we have a bigger team. I'm mostly not working evenings. So I'm basically working 8 to 5:30. So I'm still working 48 hours, 50 hours. I'm not slacking off. But that key 10 hours, I get to own that now. It's sleep, it's time with the kids, it's time with my wife. One of the things that you said, Dave, was, oh, a lot of people, it's interesting to hear the balance of people who've worked in the corporate space between I guess there is this tradition of you should check your emails even when you're out of the office. That seems weird to me. On the flip side, there are people who say, we're in PR, we're never off. My wife's a former ER nurse. We're not saving lives here. I don't care how big the brand crisis is. It's almost certainly not as important as being in the military or an ER nurse. And then that's maybe anathema to say in the industry, but when we hire somebody, I tell them, like, you are not expected to read emails in the evening. I might send you 5 of them. You're not expected to read them in the evening. When you're off, I want you to be off, because when you're not, you're going to get 5 calls from me because we're a remote team. We can't just lean over at the desk to each other. We have phone calls and Zoom calls that replace that. So I guess we'll close on this is, where's the balance for you all between being available, because we are in an industry that doesn't just live 9 to 5, but also making sure that, in your case, Evan, you're a small shop, making sure that you are still servicing clients, creating growth and creating profit.
It's funny you said that. If I could just jump off the whole PR,
Please.
ER. I remember when I was at Edelman, somebody told me, I don't remember who it was, but it was definitely at Edelman, where said, hey, we work in PR, not the ER. And that's always kind of been
Man, I thought I made that one up.
at
Okay.
the end of the day. And I say it now, and it's kind of corny and all that, but it's a good kind of thing to keep in the back of your mind ultimately. Like when you're on, right? There are some nights where you might be working, through midnight and past that at the end of the day. But again, I think it comes down to, you can set boundaries for yourself if you want to, but that's the question. Do you really want to? Like people say they do, but they don't. But if you do, you can.
Right.
If you set, something we do is you got to set these redundancies where, I'm going to be out of the office next week, spending time with the family, where you put together kind of a worksheet, if you will, of like, hey, this is everything that I'm doing, what I'm focused on. In the event something happens with this particular client, Dustin, you have the ball on this at the end of
Right.
the day.
Right.
So somebody's covering it. And at that point, you're not, operating in a silo where you're the only person who knows what's happening on a given issue. So it comes down to,
Right.
how do you staff your accounts to begin with, right? What do those look like? Are you really leaning on your colleagues, giving responsibility to them,
Yeah. True.
sure that they
Yeah.
have it, not just you? So again, challenging, but if you want to set out to do that, you can do it. So hopefully that, I can make sure I don't have the phone on the beach next week at the end of the day, because I know someone's going to have it covered at the end of the day.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's tough. You get that, like, how's everything doing? And you might,
Right.
in the course of a day, I'm going to be, in the house or away by myself, just looking at the phone, making sure like, okay, everything's cool, cool, cool. But
Well, I
again,
run the company.
gotta
Like
get that,
we're a 7-person
get out of that
team.
mindset.
I never.
But it's making sure you're intentionally setting yourself up to do it, and giving yourself those boundaries.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, I think from the client perspective, when you're evaluating an agency, are you paying for impact or are you paying for access? Right. And I think
Right.
it's the same also on our side
Yeah.
of the equation. Are you delivering impact or are you delivering access? And I think that those things, it's easy to conflate, right? It's easy to say, okay, well, I'm valuable because I am accessible. I'm always on. If the client needs me, I'm there. I'm going to do it. And I think that sometimes can get in the way of, well, I was on, I provided excellent value, I delivered these results, and now I'm going to be off. And I don't know,
Right.
I'm sure that can come from a number of different places, but I think that's often, like I said, conflated, where practitioners are thinking the way that I can deliver value is to be accessible, and I think that can send folks into a little bit of a spiral.
That's a really good point, because a lot of people do seem to think that it's, what was it Market Collective about a year ago? I'd never heard of it. Like you, Dave, my background was in political journalism and blogging, back when blogging could actually generate an income. And I'd heard of Edelman. I think I'd heard of Fleischman Hillard, and then I got connected to several thousand comms people on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, sure. I knew what Weber Shandwick was 2 years ago. Yeah, I'm smart like everybody else. And so as I have learned more about this, I've actually just lost my train of thought, so I don't know what I was going to say. So I'm sure it was something super smart, but I've lost it. So You guys can keep talking. I'll think about it for a second. No, I think that as we're, as you think through access, right, is I always find it odd that the marker, this is what it was, the marker collective a year ago said they're moving away from reach, potential reach, impressions, something like that as a metric of success. And I was really confused because like 4 years ago, I wrote a piece for PR Daily saying reach is something that we don't even value at all for a client. When a client asks us for a reach measurement, we tell them no, because reach is not a useful metric. And this is me as at the time, a 1-2 person show. And I'm like, why are these big agencies just making news about this in 2024? And I do think that a lot of times because they're looking, saying we're accessible, we're working hard, but I don't personally care. Like we're developing an AI system internally to write op-eds faster. And when every time I hire a writer, I tell them whether they're freelance or full time, I don't care if it takes you 3 hours, 30 minutes, or 300 hours to write this piece. This is the deadline, and this is the quality we need. And I don't worry about the rest. Now, maybe it's because again we're a small agency at 7 people. Maybe a larger agency has to worry about that more. But I do feel like, well, we sent it out to this many outlets. Well, that's great, but how many actually picked it up? How many showed interest in interviews, and how many actually published the content and the narrative that you want? Feels like it's way more important to me.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned analytics earlier. It's such and I know Dave is thinking about it in his practice as well. Um, it's hard, and it takes a lot of resources to be able to do it right. And if you're charging $300, $400, $500 an hour,
Yep.
that's probably the first thing that the client is not going to want to pay for. And so I think the easy way out is reach, impressions. I hate reading a report that says we got 8 billion impressions for this
Right.
campaign. There aren't that many people on Earth, and they definitely don't all speak English. So let's just start there. I mean, analytics is really tough, and measurement is really tough. And I think that that's actually one of the areas where smaller firms can set themselves apart, is to not have to beat their clients over the head with, hey, look, you've got to pay us another X thousand dollars for us to do the analytics. I mean, I don't want to say just do it, but if you can use that to show how valuable your work was when the large agency is spitting out, impressions numbers that don't make any sense, I think that can be a way to get ahead a little bit.
That's really interesting. You made me think when you're saying that, like, oh, give us a little bit extra to do that. It's like every level they give you a taste, and it's like, all right, well, if you want this, throw us a little bit more into that. Whereas there's always this kind of upselling. When I was in-house, at Coke, I got to see and consider the value of all these different firms, right? When we were starting out of the company, we wanted to do a big brand revamp, talk about Coke. Nobody knew what it was. Ultimately, they knew that there were two brothers in charge of the company who were involved in politics, but nobody knew that there was an actual company behind it of people,
Oil company, tens of thousands of employees
that make the world go round. Like you can't get away from one of these products. How do you do that? So, and at that time, you went with one of the larger, bigger firms at the end of the day because they have you can get embedded, right? You could get folks on the ground there. You have these resources, reach throughout the world ultimately at the end of the day. But is that who you want to lean in necessarily? Do they have the best relationships with this reporter that we need to get to know at Bloomberg Business at the end of the day? So all this to say, you got to shop around. This is kind of where we started the conversation. It's just big versus small at the end of the day.
Boutique,
winning ultimately because they're more nimble. They're more offered a more, specific, like, hey, you're trying to get this done. Boom, we can get this done. It's kind of, if you think about the media environment as well, there aren't these just like 3-4 huge news outlets where you go to get your news, right? I remember early on, it's like every corporate client wanted to like be above the fold in the Wall Street Journal. That's anything else that's terrible. But now, and I think corporate clients who understand this, especially after the last Trump election, that there is a whole splintered and fragmented media ecosystem where this just one-off Substack newsletter that you've never heard about actually has a lot of cachet with the people you're trying to influence in the administration at the end. So it's just thinking through. it's tough. These big firms have challenges in adjusting because you got smaller, nimble operators like yourselves who are able to get in, get the job done like the SEAL team, and get out, and you don't have this huge six-figure retainer, hanging over your head at the end of the day. So it all goes down to
Yeah.
what is the objective you're trying to accomplish when you're thinking about bringing on a PR firm? What's the right fit? Not everybody can do everything the best.
Well,
So it's just thinking through what you're trying to accomplish and who can do it best.
well, and let's actually do this, because I said earlier we should close, and then I kept talking, which I usually do. But I do have to jump in a few minutes. It is one of the things I think a lot of small agencies do poorly, and it took me years to learn how to do this, is present yourself as a professional without overstating it. There's so many buzzwords, and we're a branding expert. I'm this, we're this thing or that thing, and at some point, it sounds like lipstick on a pig. It sounds like you're trying too hard. We've intentionally gone for I think a middle of the road branding in terms of the flash and pizzazz. Our website is good. Nothing moves on it unless you're moving your arrow around. When we send our proposals, it's basically a one pager with some technical details on page 2 and 3. It's a one pager, and the most colorful thing is our logo at the top. It's a Word doc. It's a PDF. There's none of the 3 pages of background and branding language and everything else. I feel like small agencies often want to look bigger and look smarter and better when they really would just get the most done by saying, you're not going to waste time with us. Before every meeting, if a prospect doesn't reply to 6 to 10 questions I send about their goals organizationally, within comms, what their budget is, I'm not meeting with them. And by doing that, and by sticking to my price points, that allows me to be seen as a professional versus compromising away my time, compromising away something I told them, like my price or the campaign outcomes. But also just being able to say, hey, these 6 questions are going to allow us to have a really productive first meeting. Whereas I don't have to guess about what you're thinking. You don't have to guess about where I'm coming from. And that allows, I think, for that really to penetrate more deeply and look not bigger, but better, to the point you both have made.
Yeah, that's a smart way into the relationship. And I think it just speaks to this idea that you really need to make those conversations and all the prospecting about them rather than about you.
Yeah.
And it's somebody who's just gone out on his own. This is something that I have struggled with over the last couple months thinking through this is, I think I went to a meeting and I said, well, I've got all these logos. I've worked with, IBM and Anheuser-Busch and Red Hat and on and on and on. And the person that I was talking to said, Evan, nobody cares about that. They want to know what you're going to do for them. And these logos aren't really helping you get there. So, and I think that point is underscored by like your description of how you're doing your website, right? It's you're not, making it like this big flash bang, look at us sort of thing. It's, we're going to give you the information that you need. And then let's go through these 6 questions and get off to a really solid start rather than we talked about yesterday. I think you commented like, oh, the flashy, the shiny pitch deck, right? What value does that really have?
Yeah.
So I think it's getting out of that and talking a little bit more about them and their issues rather than, here's all the things that we can do, have done. Look at us.
So important. It's something we keep in mind. We were guilty of it, just like any firm can be. When you have that initial conversation, with a prospective client, the first 15 slides are all about you, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that what you would do if you're on a date with somebody? Just like talk about yourself, right? But it's more so about like asking questions about the other person. What are you looking to do? That type of thing. And then of course, on the back end, if you need to, can provide a case study here or there, or speak to, other clients. Firms do that all the time. We were guilty too. We've made huge strides in terms of fixing that, of like, to your point, that's like showing that we can do it. We can stand toe to toe with the big folks. But it's so funny. That's so easy to fall into that trap.
I got one of the things I haven't posted about this. I don't know. This is one of those pet peeves that I don't have to say too often, but I really hate it when I meet with somebody, well, for any reason, whatever, and they add me to their newsletter. I didn't ask to be added to your newsletter, and the fact that you added me without asking, I'm tempted to just delete your email, block it, and tell everyone that you're never to work with you. because you're not thinking about the interest of the prospect, you're thinking about your own self-interest. And we had a recent, we had a couple of proposals for a project. And the person who, the two people who sent us the proposals, one knew us really well, one didn't really know us at all outside of 2 Zoom calls. But it was 3.5 pages for one of them of just stuff. I'm like, when am I going to get to the thing that that I value as the customer? Because we're going to pay thousands of dollars for this consulting service. And finally we got there. It ended up being the same set of services, almost verbatim, as the other person, which is good. It means that they're both know what they're doing. But man, like that 3.5 pages was probably a 15%, maybe 10% of the reason we didn't go with that the second person.
It's a really kind of interesting challenge, and I wish I felt confident enough on my own to be able to just get all the way there, like, and by there I mean to the client issue, without having to really say anything about myself. But listening to your story, like, yeah, I wish more people would just come to me and start with the issue. Hey, we know you have this issue. Here's how we're going to solve it. Not here's all the things you should know about us, and now let's talk about your issue. Like, let's just cut straight to it. And I'm a direct person, so maybe that could be personal preference, but yeah.
Guys, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate it. And Dave, as I was saying on our prep call, I haven't seen you in a few years. We've talked, we've texted, we've done emails. I don't think we've actually seen each other. So it's I'm envious of you not even needing a fake backdrop and even looking better than I do.
Great. I'd love to do it again. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us. This is a great combo.
This was great, guys. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Appreciate
Enjoy the rest of your day.
See y'all.